The mysterious arrival. Introduction of key characters. Lina. Lina is a young woman in her early 20s, born and raised in a small, close-knit village at the edge of an ancient African forest. She has always felt a strong sense of wanderlust, dreaming of exploring the world beyond the boundaries of her village. Despite her passion for adventure, Lina feels tethered by her responsibilities at home, where her family depends on her. The only child of her aging parents, Lina has grown accustomed to working hard, taking care of the household chores, and helping her mother with the market trade. However, she often finds herself yearning for more, a life of discovery, excitement, and perhaps something more extraordinary than the everyday rhythm of her village life. Lina is known for her resilience. She doesn't easily give up and tends to push herself to the limit. But underneath her tough exterior lies a deep sensitivity, a connection to the myths and legends of the forest that have been passed down through generations. These stories, whispered by the elders around the village fire, have always fascinated her. She believes the world is filled with wonders yet to be discovered, and she dreams of being part of something bigger. Tariq. Tariq is a quiet, thoughtful man in his 30s, a skilled hunter who has lived in the village all his life. He is a man of few words, but his actions speak volumes. Tariq is deeply connected to the land, understanding the rhythms of the forest, the animals, and the changing seasons. While others in the village fear the ancient forest and its mysteries, Tariq is one of the few who knows its secrets passed down through generations of hunters and elders who have walked its paths for centuries. Tariq's life has been shaped by his knowledge of the land and its powers. He believes in the old ways and the natural balance between humans and the earth, often spending long hours alone in the forest, listening to its whispers. Tariq is both a protector and a keeper of ancient knowledge. Despite his rough exterior, there is a gentleness about him, especially when it comes to Lina. He sees in her a strength and curiosity that he admires, and he silently hopes that she will one day come to understand the balance that he so deeply respects. Bashir. Bashir is an outsider who arrives in the village one early morning, carrying the aura of mystery and intrigue. He is in his late 30s, tall and lean, with sharp features and eyes that seem to be always searching. There's an air of intelligence about him, though it's unclear whether it's from knowledge or something darker. He speaks little about his past, offering only cryptic answers when asked about his origins. His presence in the village raises suspicion among the elders, but his charm and persistence eventually win them over. Bashir claims to be a scholar of ancient civilizations, eager to study the legends of the land. Bashir's arrival disrupts the peaceful rhythm of village life. His interest in the forest, in particular, seems to run deeper than mere academic curiosity. He spends a lot of time speaking with the elders, seeking out obscure legends that the villagers have long forgotten. While his charm and charisma draw some, others grow wary, sensing that he may have ulterior motives for being there. Lina, sensing an opportunity for adventure, is drawn to him, but she can't shake the feeling that something about Bashir is not as it seems. Setting the scene. The village, nestled between rolling hills and the dense canopy of the ancient forest, is full of life. The houses are made of clay and thatch, and smoke rises from cooking fires as women prepare meals, children run through the streets playing, and animals graze in the fields. The village is small but vibrant, its people bound by tradition, working together to ensure survival. The forest, however, is a mysterious place. The villagers view it both with awe and fear, aware of the strange powers that lie within its depths. Lina's dreams are different from those of the other village women. While many are content with their lives, fulfilling traditional roles, Lina is constantly seeking more. She believes that the forest holds secrets that no one in her village has yet discovered, and it's those secrets that call to her. At night, she lies awake listening to the sounds of the jungle, the distant growls of animals, the rustle of trees in the wind, and the soft whispers of old legends that are carried on the breeze. As Lina helps her mother with the market goods, she can't help but feel torn. The responsibilities of family life weigh on her shoulders, and yet she longs for something greater. She wants to see what lies beyond the borders of her village. She dreams of standing on distant mountains, crossing vast deserts, and perhaps uncovering lost treasures of the past. When Bashir arrives in the village, it's clear that he is no ordinary man. He is dressed in fine, traveling clothes that seem out of place in the village, his boots shining even under the dusty sun. He speaks with the elders in hushed tones, and his presence brings an air of mystery to the village. Bashir has already begun to make an impression, and Lina is both curious and wary of him. She often finds herself watching him from a distance, wondering what brings him to the village. The catalyst. One evening, as the sun sets behind the mountains and the villagers gather around the fire, Lina overhears a conversation between Bashir and several of the elders. They speak in low voices, but Lina's sharp ears catch snippets of their words. It's something about an ancient creature, one that has not been seen for centuries. Bashir seems insistent, pressing the elders for information about the creature's last known location. The elders are reluctant to speak, but Bashir's persistence finally wears them down. Lina's heart races. She knows the stories, tales of a creature that once roamed the land, a creature with the power to change the very fabric of the world. Some say it was a serpent, others claim it was a god in the form of a snake. The creature had been sealed away, hidden deep within the forest, but its power was said to be immense. To Lina, the possibility of this creature's awakening is both thrilling and terrifying. Unable to resist, Lina confronts Bashir the next morning. She catches him as he's leaving the elders' gathering and asks him point blank about the creature. Bashir looks at her, his eyes narrowing with a mix of surprise and admiration. He warns her to stay away, telling her that the creature is too dangerous for someone like her. But Lina, filled with both curiosity and a desire to prove herself, insists that she must know more. Bashir's expression hardens, but he sees something in Lina, a fire that he recognizes. He tells her that the forest holds many secrets, some of which are better left undisturbed. But Lina, determined to uncover the truth, decides that she must embark on a journey to find the creature herself. With a final glance at the village, Lina sets off toward the heart of the forest, her curiosity driving her forward. Little does she know, the forest holds far more than she could ever imagine, and her journey is about to lead her into a world of ancient powers, unspoken connections, and a force beyond her control. The journey begins. Deepening bonds. Lina knew that if she were to succeed in her quest, she would need help. The forest was vast, unpredictable, and filled with dangers that no one in the village dared to confront. But Tariq was different. He had spent his life in these woods, tracking the animals, understanding the land, and listening to its whispers. If anyone could guide her safely through the treacherous depths of the forest, it was him. One morning, as the sun began to rise and the mist clung to the earth, Lina approached Tariq as he cleaned his hunting tools outside his small hut. He looked up at her, his face weathered from years of living in the wild, and saw the determination in her eyes. He knew this moment was coming. "Tariq, I need your help," Lina said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "I'm going into the forest to find the snake god. I need someone who knows the land, someone who can keep me safe." Tariq paused, his hands stilling as he considered her request. He had heard the rumors about the snake god, stories told in hushed tones by the elders, of a creature whose awakening would bring disaster to the land. He had always respected the ancient ways and the forces of nature that the villagers feared. But to disturb the balance, to seek out the snake god, was to invite darkness into the world. "You don't understand, Lina," Tariq finally said, his voice low and filled with concern. "The forest is not what you think. There are forces in there that we don't fully understand. The snake god, if it's truly awakened, will not be something we can control. You're asking for more than just an adventure. You're asking for something dangerous." Lina's gaze never wavered. She had heard the warnings, and they only fueled her desire to uncover the truth. "I'm not afraid," she said, her voice unwavering. I have to know what's out there. If there's a way to stop it, I will find it. Tariq sighed deeply, his brow furrowing. He had always admired Lena's courage, but he also knew the risks of venturing into the heart of the forest. He had seen hunters disappear without a trace, swallowed whole by the land's darkness. But despite his reservations, he couldn't turn her away. Something about Lena's determination stirred something in him, a sense of duty, perhaps, or a long-buried need to protect her. I'll help you, Tariq finally said, standing up. But you must promise me something, you will listen to me, and you will trust the forest. Its secrets are not meant to be uncovered lightly. What you seek may come with a price. Lena nodded, grateful for his help. And so, their partnership began, an unlikely bond formed between a young woman hungry for adventure and an older, wiser man who had long since accepted the danger of the land he knew so well. Tariq began to teach Lena the ways of the forest, how to move quietly through the underbrush, how to track animals, how to listen to the wind and read the signs that nature left behind. Every step they took deeper into the forest brought Lena closer to understanding the wild beauty of the land, but also the danger that lurked in the shadows. Challenges and growth. The journey was not easy. The forest was dense, the air thick with moisture, and the path was often obscured by tangled vines and thick underbrush. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Lena found herself struggling with the physical demands of the journey, the weight of her pack, the exhaustion in her limbs, and the constant battle against the relentless jungle. The first few days were the hardest. They encountered harsh weather, torrential rainstorms that left them soaked to the bone, and sweltering heat that made the air feel thick and suffocating. They had to find shelter from the storms, and more than once, Lena stumbled as she tried to keep pace with Tariq. Her muscles ached, and doubts began to creep into her mind. Was this really the right path? Was the forest truly worth the risk? But Tariq remained calm, unfazed by the challenges of the jungle. He taught Lena how to find food and water, how to read the signs of the forest, and how to survive. In the evenings, when they sat around their small campfire, he would share stories of his past, tales of his youth when he was first learning the ways of the land, and how his father had taught him the importance of respecting the forces of nature. As they traveled further into the forest, Lena began to sense something strange, an unspoken connection between herself and the land. The whispers of the trees seemed to call to her, their rustling leaves forming words that only she could hear. She could feel the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, and at times, it was as if the forest itself was guiding her, showing her the way forward. One evening, as they paused near a river to rest, Lena looked around, feeling an odd sense of belonging. She no longer felt like an outsider in the forest. The forest had accepted her, or perhaps it had chosen her, just as it had chosen those who had come before her. She wasn't just seeking the snake god anymore, she was beginning to understand that her journey was part of something much larger. The discovery. On the seventh day of their journey, as the sun began to set and the shadows grew long, Lena and Tariq stumbled upon something unexpected, an ancient shrine, hidden deep within the heart of the forest. The shrine was overgrown with vines, its stone surface weathered by centuries of neglect, but there was no mistaking its significance. It had been built by the ancients, a place of worship for a god long forgotten. The shrine was adorned with intricate carvings, depicting serpents intertwined with human figures, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. Lena's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the symbols. They were the same as those described in the legends she had heard as a child. As they approached the shrine, Lena felt a shiver run down her spine. The air around the shrine was thick, charged with an energy that seemed to hum beneath her skin. She could feel the presence of the snake god, ancient and powerful, stirring beneath the surface of the earth. Tariq stood back, his face grave as he observed the shrine. "This is it," he whispered. "The snake god's power has returned. We've uncovered something we were never meant to find." Lena stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch the stone. As her fingers brushed against it, a sudden rush of energy surged through her body. It was like a current of electricity, sharp and painful, but also exhilarating. The ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble, and for a moment, she felt as though the forest itself was alive, watching her. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from deep within the forest, sending a chill down Lina's spine. She turned, her heart pounding in her chest. In the distance, she saw the glimmer of eyes that glowed like fire, watching her with malevolent intent. The first sign of the snake god's power had manifested. Tarek's voice cut through the tension. "We have to leave. Now." But it was too late. The forest was waking, and Lina knew, deep down, that her journey had only just begun. The snake god had been disturbed, and there would be no turning back. The awakening of the snake god. The transformation of Lina. Lina's hand still tingled from the moment she touched the shrine, as though the energy from the snake god's ancient power had seeped into her very soul. That night, as she lay beneath the stars in the makeshift camp she and Tarek had set up, strange visions began to haunt her dreams. Her body was no longer her own. She dreamt of a great serpent, its massive coils twisting through the earth, its eyes glowing like molten gold. Its voice echoed in her mind, speaking in a language that was both alien and familiar. When Lina awoke, she felt different, as though something deep inside her had shifted. The forest around her seemed more alive, more present. The trees whispered, their leaves brushing against her skin as if to remind her of their presence. She could hear the wind moving through the branches with a clarity she had never known before, and the sounds of animals in the distance seemed to speak to her in ways she couldn't explain. The visions continued. Every time Lina closed her eyes, she was drawn into the swirling darkness of the serpent's world. She saw glimpses of a time long before her, when the snake god had ruled the land with an unchallenged power. She felt the pull of the serpent, its ancient energy flowing through her veins, and for a brief moment, she understood what it meant to be part of something much larger than herself. She was connected to the very heartbeat of the earth. But with this power came fear. Lina began to experience strange abilities. She could make the wind shift with a mere thought, and in moments of intense emotion, the earth seemed to tremble beneath her feet. At first, she tried to ignore these changes, convincing herself they were simply a result of the forest's power. But as the days passed, it became clear that the snake god's energy was inside her, and she could no longer deny its influence. Tarek watched Lina closely, his concern growing with every passing day. He had known from the start that the snake god was not just a myth, but a force of nature, a force that could reshape the world if awakened. He had tried to warn Lina, but now he saw the changes in her, and he knew it was only a matter of time before the full extent of the god's power took hold. "Lina," Tarek said one evening, as they sat by the fire, the crackling flames casting shadows on their faces. "You must understand, the snake god is not just a legend. It is a force beyond our comprehension. Its power can change the world, for better or for worse. You're not just carrying its power, you are becoming its vessel. I don't know if you fully understand what that means." Lina's gaze faltered, but she refused to back down. "I'm not afraid," she replied, though the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her. "I have to understand this. I have to know what it means for me, for my future." Tarek's expression softened, and for the first time, he reached out to place a hand on her shoulder. "The future is not something we can control, Lina. The forest has a way of making sure we learn that lesson, often the hard way. But I can see the changes in you. You're not the same person who left the village." Lina looked away, her thoughts racing. She didn't know who she was becoming, but she could feel the pull of the serpent's power within her, and she didn't know if she could stop it. The snake god had awoken, and with it, a force was stirring in her, a force she didn't understand, but one that seemed to be shaping her destiny. Bashir's true intentions. Days passed, and the tension between Lina, Tarek, and the world around them continued to build. But Lina's transformation was not the only thing that had changed. Bashir, who had been following them from the shadows, began to reveal his true intentions. Lina had always sensed there was something more to Bashir than met the eye. His charm, his cryptic manner, his obsession with the snake god, it all seemed too convenient, too deliberate. She had overheard whispers from the villagers, suggesting that Bashir had been traveling for years, seeking the serpent's power. His past was shrouded in mystery, and it wasn't until Lina confronted him directly that the pieces began to fall into place. One evening, as the three of them sat by the campfire, Lina finally pressed him for the truth. She had to know what his intentions were, and why he had come to their village. "Bashir, why are you really here?" Lina asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "You've been hunting this god for years, haven't you? You know what it is capable of. What are you really after?" Bashir's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, he seemed to weigh his words carefully. Then, with a heavy sigh, he leaned forward, his gaze locked on Lina. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Lina. The snake god is the key to everything, to power, to control, to the future of this land. I've been tracking its power for years because I know what it can do. I can control it, Lina. I can harness its power and bend the world to my will." Lina's blood ran cold as she realized the depth of his intentions. Bashir had been using her all along, pretending to be an ally while secretly seeking the snake god's power for his own gain. But she wasn't just angry, she was terrified. Bashir's words confirmed her worst fears. The power of the snake god was too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. And Bashir's obsession with it had already cost him his humanity. "You can't control it, Bashir," Lina said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's not just a tool to be used. It's alive. It's part of the earth, part of the balance of this world. If you try to control it, you'll destroy everything." Bashir laughed, but it was hollow. "You don't understand. This power can change everything, and I will make sure it does." Lina's heart sank. Bashir was beyond reasoning, and his obsession with the god's power was dangerous. She could no longer trust him. The battle begins. That night, as the full moon rose over the forest, Lina, Tariq, and Bashir found themselves at a crossroads. The snake god's power had begun to stir more violently, its presence growing stronger with every passing hour. Lina could feel its energy coursing through her, pulling her toward the heart of the forest, where the creature was said to reside. But Bashir had other plans. He had prepared for this moment, gathering followers and resources in secret. Now, he intended to take control of the snake god, and nothing would stand in his way, not Lina, not Tariq, and certainly not the forces of nature itself. A fierce confrontation ensued. Bashir called forth the power of the snake god, unleashing dark energy that twisted the forest around them, bending the trees and creating an unnatural storm. Lina felt her connection to the earth intensify, but it was no longer enough to counter Bashir's will. Tariq fought valiantly, using his knowledge of the forest to protect Lina, but even he was no match for the raw power Bashir had unleashed. The battle raged on, the forest itself seemingly torn between the two forces, Lina's bond with the land, and Bashir's desire for domination. In the end, it was Lina who realized the truth. Her strength didn't come from controlling the snake god's power, but from her connection to the earth, the forest, and its creatures. She could feel the balance returning as she reached deep within herself, calling on the forces of nature to stop Bashir. With one final surge of energy, Lina used the snake god's power not to dominate, but to restore balance. Bashir's power crumbled, and with a final, defiant scream, he was consumed by the forces he had sought to control. As the forest calmed and the dawn broke, Lina stood tall, her connection to the earth now stronger than ever. The battle was over, but the true test was yet to come, the price of power. The final showdown. The air was thick with tension as Lina, Tariq, and Bashir stood at the edge of the clearing, where the ancient shrine lay in ruins. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the forest as if nature itself was holding its breath. The snake god's power surged through Lina, her every step resonating with the ancient energy that flowed beneath the earth. Bashir, however, was no longer the man she had once trusted. He stood across from her, his eyes filled with hunger and desperation. "You don't understand, Lina," Bashir called out, his voice twisted with madness. "This power was meant for me. You can't stop me. No one can. The snake god is mine." Lina clenched her fist, feeling the god's energy pulse within her. It was overwhelming, a force she had never fully understood, but one that she now recognized as a part of her. Bashir, too, had tapped into this power, but unlike Lina, he sought only to control it, to use it for his own ambition. The forest around them trembled, the trees creaking and groaning as the snake god's awakening reached its peak. "You don't control the god," Lina replied, her voice steady despite the rising chaos. "The forest is not yours to command, Bashir. It's not about power. It's about balance." Tariq, standing a few paces behind Lina, felt the weight of the moment. The snake god's power was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was both terrifying and beautiful, a force that could shape the world in ways no one could predict. But he knew Lina was right. They had to stop Bashir, before the god's power consumed them all. Bashir's laugh echoed through the clearing, bitter and cold. "Balance," he scoffed. "The world has no balance. It's chaos. The strong survive. The weak fall. And I will be the one to lead it all." With a roar, Bashir unleashed a wave of energy, the ground beneath their feet cracking and shifting. Trees fell, their roots torn from the earth as if the very forest itself was being torn apart. Lina stumbled, feeling the power surge through her like a torrent, threatening to overwhelm her. But she fought back, focusing on the connection she had with the forest, the bond that tied her to the land, the creatures, and the spirit of the snake god. The battle began in earnest. Bashir summoned the full force of the snake god's power, its massive coils twisting through the air like a storm of fury. Lina, however, tapped into the quiet strength of the forest. She called upon the spirit of the trees, the wind, and the earth to fight back. The two forces collided, their energies clashing in a brilliant explosion of light and sound. Tariq fought to protect Lina, using his knowledge of the forest to shield her from Bashir's attacks. He summoned the animals of the jungle, lions, elephants, and birds, to aid them, but even with the creatures of the wild on their side, they were losing ground. The power of the snake god was too great, and Bashir was determined to claim it for himself. "Lina, we can't win like this," Tariq shouted, his voice strained. "You have to find a way to control the god's power, or we're all doomed." Lina's mind raced. She knew she couldn't keep fighting Bashir indefinitely. The power he wielded was corrupting him, turning him into something unrecognizable, and it was starting to corrupt her, too. She felt the god's power pulling at her, urging her to give in, to let go and let it consume her. But she couldn't. Not like this. As the battle raged on, Lina's heart began to understand the truth. She wasn't meant to control the snake god. The god was meant to be a part of the world, to maintain the balance between nature and humanity. But that balance had been broken, and now it was up to her to restore it. With a deep breath, Lina closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind and heart. She felt the land beneath her, the creatures around her, and the wind in the trees. The snake god's power surged through her, but this time, she didn't fight it. She let it flow, let it become a part of her. She wasn't controlling it, she was surrendering to it, allowing it to guide her. Sacrifice and redemption. Lina's transformation was not without cost. As the snake god's energy flooded her, she felt herself weakening. It was as though the god's power was too great for a human body to bear. Her vision blurred, and her body trembled with the weight of the energy surging through her veins. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Tariq, help me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I need you to trust me. I can't do this alone. Tariq, seeing the pain in her eyes, stepped forward, placing his hand on her shoulder. I'm with you, Lina. Always. Together, they focused on the task at hand, to restore balance. Lina's mind connected with the ancient spirit of the snake god, and in that moment, she understood. The snake god wasn't meant to be controlled. It was meant to coexist with humanity, to guide the land and its people, not to destroy them. Bashir had been wrong in thinking that the god was a tool to be wielded for personal gain. Lina's heart swelled with the weight of her decision. She knew that to stop Bashir and restore balance, she would have to make a sacrifice. She would have to release the power of the snake god, but doing so would cost her everything. With a final, determined breath, Lina released the god's power. The energy exploded outward in a blinding flash, filling the forest with light. The trees trembled as the power was set free, the land itself seeming to exhale as the serpent spirit returned to the earth. Bashir screamed in rage as the power slipped from his grasp, his body consumed by the forces he had tried to control. The snake god's energy flooded the forest, restoring its balance and quieting the storm. Lina collapsed to the ground, her body drained of energy, her breath shallow and uneven. She had done it, but at a great cost. The aftermath. Bashir was defeated, his ambition destroyed by his own lust for power. The forest was silent once again, its ancient balance restored. The power of the snake god had been returned to the earth, where it belonged. But Lina knew that her victory had come with a heavy price. Tariq knelt beside her, his face filled with concern as he gently helped her sit up. You did it, Lina, he said softly. You saved us all. Lina smiled weakly, her body still trembling from the exertion. I didn't save anyone, Tariq. I just did what I had to do. As the dawn broke over the horizon, the forest began to heal. The trees seemed to stand taller, the air clearer, and the animals of the jungle returned to their natural rhythms. But Lina knew that things would never be the same. The snake god's power was no longer a threat, but it had left its mark on her, a mark that would shape her for the rest of her life. She had saved her village, but in doing so, she had forever changed. The connection she now shared with the forest, the earth, and the ancient power of the snake god was unbreakable. She had learned the true cost of power, and the price of maintaining balance. As the village celebrated their safety, Lina stood on the edge of the forest, looking out into the horizon. She was no longer the young woman who had once dreamed of adventure. She was something more now, a guardian of the land, a protector of the ancient forces that had shaped her world. The forest whispered to her, as it had always done, but now, Lina understood its language. And in her heart, she knew that she would continue to walk the path of the land, never again as an outsider, but as a part of the world that had shaped her. The legacy of the snake god. Lina's return. When Lina finally returned to her village, it was not the triumphant, celebratory homecoming she had imagined. Instead, there was a quiet reverence in the air, as if the village itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to speak, to explain what had happened, what had changed. The villagers gathered around as Lina stepped through the entrance of the village, her body still weak from the battle and her spirit heavy with the knowledge of the sacrifice she had made. They saw her, not just as a young woman, but as something more, a protector of the land, someone who had faced the very forces of nature and lived to tell the tale. But there was something in her eyes, something that had shifted. The Lina who had left to find the snake god was no longer the same. She had seen the true cost of power, and with that knowledge came a deep weight. She was a hero, yes, but she was also burdened with the responsibility of keeping the balance she had fought so hard to restore. Tariq stood by her side, his presence a steadying force. He had been with her every step of the way, guiding her, teaching her, and watching as she discovered the true depth of her strength. While the village hailed her as a hero, Tariq knew that it was Lena's inner strength, her ability to connect with the land and its ancient powers, that had made all the difference. "I don't feel like a hero," Lena said quietly to him one evening, as the village continued its celebration in the distance. "I feel like I've lost something. Something I can't ever get back." Tariq smiled gently, his weathered face full of understanding. "The forest gives, and it takes, Lena. It's never easy. But you've done what no one else could have. You've restored the balance. The land is at peace now, because of you." Lena looked out at the villagers celebrating, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle wasn't over. She had saved the village, but she had also witnessed the destructive potential of the snake god's power. The forces she had faced weren't just ancient legends, they were living, breathing parts of the world, and Lena knew that her connection to them would last forever. "I'll never be the same," she said, more to herself than to Tariq. "None of us are," Tariq replied, his voice filled with quiet wisdom. "But that's the price of growth." The snake god's legacy. Days turned into weeks, and life in the village slowly returned to normal. The crops grew tall, the animals returned to their natural rhythms, and the village's people resumed their daily routines. But despite the calm, there was an underlying sense of change. The memory of the snake god, of the power that had been unleashed and then contained, lingered in the air, in the very soil beneath their feet. Lena could feel it too. The land had been restored, but it was a land forever changed. The snake god's legacy was now etched into the earth itself, a presence that could never be erased. Every time Lena walked through the forest, she could feel the weight of the ancient power still pulsing beneath the ground, a reminder of what had been awakened and what had been sacrificed to restore balance. The villagers began to look at Lena differently. They had always respected her, but now, they looked to her as a leader, as someone who could guide them through the complexities of a world where ancient forces still held sway. Lena didn't want this responsibility, but she understood it was hers. She was the bridge between the ancient powers of the land and the changing world of the village. One evening, as she stood on the edge of the forest, looking out at the stars, she felt a presence beside her. It was Tariq, his quiet strength grounding her once again. "You have to find a way to live with this, Lena," he said gently. "The snake god's power is part of you now. It's part of the world. You can't change that. But you can use it to protect the balance. The forest will guide you." Lena nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the responsibility she now carried. "How do I do that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How do I protect something that's so much bigger than me?" Tariq placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't do it alone. You do it with the land, with the people, and with the spirits of the forest. You listen. And you remember that balance is not something you force. It's something you nurture." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the wind brush against her skin. The forest was alive, and for the first time, she felt truly connected to it. The snake god's power still flowed through her, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was a gift, one that could be used to heal and protect, not to dominate. The village would need her. The world would need her. But Lena was no longer afraid. She had learned the price of power, and she had learned how to wield it wisely. The ending. In the months that followed, Lena took on her new role with quiet resolve. She helped the villagers navigate the changes brought on by the awakening of the snake god, ensuring that the balance between the ancient forces of nature and the modern world remained intact. The village flourished, and Lena found a new sense of purpose in her life. Tariq continued his work as a hunter, but now he often accompanied Lena on her journeys into the forest. The two of them worked together, their bond stronger than ever, as they guided the village in preserving the delicate harmony between humanity and the natural world. Though Lena had saved her village, she had also become something more, a guardian of the earth, a protector of the land's ancient powers. She had learned that power was not something to be controlled or coveted, but something to be respected. And with that knowledge, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. One evening, as Lina stood once more on the edge of the forest, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she smiled softly to herself. She had come a long way since the day she set out on her journey. She had faced darkness, and she had found her strength. But most importantly, she had discovered the true power of balance, and in doing so, she had become one with the land, a keeper of its secrets, and a protector of its future. The snake god's legacy would live on, not in the destruction it had once threatened, but in the wisdom of the earth itself. And Lina knew, as long as she walked this path, the balance would be kept, not just for her village, but for all who called this land home. And so, with a heart full of purpose and a soul connected to the ancient rhythms of the earth, Lina stepped forward into the future, ready to embrace the challenges and the mysteries that awaited her. The legacy of the snake god had only just begun.